Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for being here. Welcome to our March meeting of the Western Pennsylvania Mushroom Club. My name is Stephen Buckland. I'm the current president, and I'm really excited to share some updates on the club with everyone. So just another reminder, a new thing we're trying out this year for our Zoom meetings is a mushroom ID session following the speaker. Last month, we tried doing it in a breakout room.
Did you tap on that? There's a little microphone.
Sorry about that. I just muted everyone and you will not be able to unmute yourself. So put it in the chat if you would like to be unmuted and speak. But yeah, Mushroom ID session. We're just gonna do it in the main room this time instead of in a breakout room because pretty much everyone was here for the ID session by the end of the meeting. But other questions or discussion topics are always welcome at that end portion of the meeting. So yeah, bring your photos. I think tonight, Kara and Garrett are going to be focusing on morels and false morels since that's the season we're heading into. They're going to be sharing some of their cool finds in the Gyromitra and Verpa and Morchella genera. I also wanted to announce our new photography chair, Sarah Klingensmith. Thank you so much, Sarah, for volunteering to take on this position. And thank you to Josh Doty for serving for 2 years in this position as well. Really awesome to see folks volunteering for the club to keep making fun stuff happen. So remember to submit your pictures for the photo contest, I think by sometime in September. So we're just at the beginning of mushroom season this year, plenty of time to get out and get some good photos. Everyone should have received their March and April newsletter. There's some articles in there on our 2021 meetings, the City Nature Challenge, some stuff on Daniel Gillies, Trimides, Versicolor research, and lots of other goodies. And submissions are always welcome for the newsletter. So if there's anything you'd like to contribute, reach out to Cecily Franklin, the newsletter editor. All right, so now we've got some upcoming walks. These are events that Allegheny Land Trust is hosting with Julie Travellini, our current secretary and a club identifier. The April 30th and May 23rd walks are already sold out. Wow, that happened fast. But there will be plenty of other walks throughout the year. Some really special walks coming up June 9th and July 17th. Locations to be announced. Should be a fun surprise for folks who've been keeping an eye on Allegheny Land Trust's activities in the region. There will also be a walk at Sycamore Island on July 31st. And that one is going to be $25, but that includes a boat ticket, a ticket on the boat to the island for a fun walk out in the middle of the Allegheny River. I really hope I can make it to that one this year. Here are some events that I'll be doing coming up for the Pittsburgh Parks Conservancy. I added a walk April 16th in Highland Park. This is my first in-person hike since COVID started, and that's going to be limited to 10 people and free. You can register online at pittsburghparks.org/events. That'll probably be up here in a couple weeks, the registration for that. It's not up yet. Other things, I'm doing a spring mushroom webinar on April 28th, and I'll be doing a virtual hike around Highland Park on April 30th, kicking off the City Nature Challenge. And, you know, I'll probably be biased and focusing mostly on the fungi and lichens that I'm finding while I'm out showing folks how to use iNaturalist. And that'll be a Facebook Live hike on the Parks Conservancy's Facebook. Speaking of the City Nature Challenge, it's coming up here pretty soon, and it expands way beyond just Pittsburgh. Any of the surrounding counties, if you're out on this weekend, April 30th through May 3rd, and you take photos of any cool stuff, not just mushrooms, and you post it to iNaturalist, it'll be counted towards Pittsburgh's totals in the City Nature Challenge this year. So plan on getting out sometime that weekend. It runs Friday through Monday, so 4-day weekend of this global digital BioBlitz. And you can read more about that in our latest newsletter. Here's a rundown of our monthly meetings for the year. We're hoping that we can resume in-person meetings in August. That's our tentative plan. So we moved our annual cultivation meeting to August instead of May so that we could still get folks their mushroom growing kits. But yeah, you can take a look through the titles here. All of the details on these meetings are also posted to our website. So if you visit our website and go to the events page, you can find more details and some photos from each month's speaker. Really excited for all the folks that we have coming to speak for the club this year. And real quick, there was a question about the City Nature Challenge. Any observations that you post to iNaturalist on those dates will automatically be a part of the Pittsburgh count, as long as you have it geolocated to somewhere within the surrounding counties. So yeah, you don't have to join the project, but there is a project on there if you want to join it and be able to keep track of like the leaderboards and what other folks have been posting. Great question. All right, in terms of other events, other club events this year, we've got, next slide, Dye Day with Judy McEnroth. So Judy is a member of our club and an expert when it comes to dyeing, and she's gonna show us how it's done. No experience is necessary, but space is limited and registration is required. The morning is going to include some mushroom walks, which are free, but the afternoon session is $10. And if you're coming for both, you might want to pack a lunch. There won't be any food provided. To register for Dye Day, you can visit our website and go to the events page and scroll to the second page of events and then click the listing for Dye Day. Once you're there, you'll find a form to input your name and pay the $10 registration fee. All right, and here's some info on our annual Gary Linkoff Memorial Foray. This year, it's going to be the weekend of September 18th and 19th with a pre-foray walk in Cook Forest on September 17th. The main events will be at the Rose Barn, and we're also planning on having Science Sunday the Sunday following the event, also at the Rose Barn in North Park. So again, this is tentative. We'll see how things go with COVID, but we're planning on hosting this event. Registration for the main event is $55 for non-members, $35 for members, and there will be a registration and a fee for Science Sunday as well. And a list of workshops will be forthcoming. Our speakers for the Linkoff Foray this year will be Leon Chernoff, the editor of Mushroom, the Journal of Wild Mushrooming, and we'll also have Michael Kuo, the developer of mushroomexpert.com. So really awesome speakers. I think it's going to be a really great event if you can make it out. Here's our membership report. And these numbers are hot off the press. So we're up to 990 members as of today from 554 households. So this is up 86 members and 52 households from the start of the year. And I just want to say thank you so much to all of our members, new and old, for supporting the club. It's really awesome to be a part of such a huge club of dedicated mushroom enthusiasts. So thank you for continuing to support the work that we're doing. And for the folks who are watching the recording of this, who maybe aren't members yet, there's a little bit of information on what our fees are and what some of the benefits are to becoming a member. Some other benefits aside from the ones listed here include that you'll receive our bi-monthly newsletter, you'll get updates on our walks and events, you'll get a discount at on the registration for the annual foray, and you'll receive a mushroom grow kit if we host an in-person meeting in August and you're able to make it. All right, up next are our Mushroom ID Awards. Our Button ID program recognizes club members who can identify different species of fungi, and buttons are awarded at the 10, 25, 50, 75, 100, 150, and 300 level. Members can submit their list for verification to the email above. And we have 2 buttons to announce tonight. If I can get it to the next slide. So congratulations to Victoria and Jonathan. Victoria submitted a list of 50 different species, and Jonathan submitted a list of 25. So we're really happy to award you both with your buttons. Congratulations. Looking forward to your next species list. Oh, I also just remembered, I forgot to announce Kara's pop-up walk. So Kara just posted a walk at Hillman State Park this weekend. I'm forgetting the exact details. I think it's 10 a.m. on Saturday. I'm sure Kara can post it in the chat if I messed that up. All right, next month's meeting, we'll have Daniel Gillies presenting his Trametes versicolor research. Daniel was a recipient of a scholarship last year from the club, and he'll be presenting on his investigation of color band zonations in turkey tail mushrooms in response to environmental conditions. So that'll be next month's speaker. And before we begin tonight's presentation, before I introduce tonight's speaker, are there any other announcements folks would like to share? Feel free to put things in the chat and I can unmute folks as well, if anyone would like to speak. And so Kara put in the chat, 10 a.m. at Knowlton Road at Hillman State Park, the Figure 8 trailhead. So bring your mask and your mushroom basket and meet Kara at Hillman State Park. Cool. Well, oh, the club Facebook page is WPA Mushroom Club. I think it's It might be all one word. Maybe someone can post a link to it in the chat. Thanks, Julie. Alrighty, well, without further ado, I'll introduce our speakers for tonight. So I wanna welcome Trent and Kristen Blizzard, self-proclaimed modern foragers, joining us tonight from their home in Glenwood Springs, Colorado, I believe. And they've been trekking the forests of Colorado, the Midwest, and the Pacific Northwest for years, mostly with wild edible mushrooms in mind. At first a hobby, the hunt for mushrooms quickly became nothing short of an obsession for these two mycophiles, both of whom are certified wild mushroom identification experts in their home state of Colorado. They're the authors of Wild Mushrooms, a cookbook and foraging guide, and they're here tonight to provide us with some tips and techniques to preserve and store mushrooms for year-round enjoyment. So thanks so much, Trent and Kristen, for being here tonight. I'll let you take things away.
Thanks, Stephen.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Stephen.
Hi. Hopefully you guys can hear us okay. I'm Trent Blizzard, and this is Kristen.
Hello.
And we're psyched to be here today with you guys for the next 45 minutes or so, talking about our favorite topic, mushrooms. We have our cookbook here, brand new this fall. We'll tell you a little bit about that, maybe first a little about us before we launch into mushroom talk. Where should we start? I guess the cookbook really came out of a problem that we had experienced, and you guys can probably appreciate this. You do a lot of foraging, and sometimes it's kind of an embarrassment of riches, and you have baskets of edible mushrooms, and you really have to figure out what to do with them. And I think that's where a lot of this came from. We spent a lot of time cleaning our mushrooms and then studying how to preserve them and enjoy them year round. And after doing that for a few years and picking a lot of people's brains, we kind of, a publisher called us and said, would you like to write a cookbook? And we were like, sure. And then we, put it together. We're not chefs. We're not mycologists. We're not writers. It turned out to be a big job. So we went out and interviewed 25 different foragers and got lots of good information from them, filled in a lot of our blind spots, and they all gave us these really good recipes that are pretty accessible. That was one of our asks, that, give us recipes that we can cook ourselves. We cooked up all the recipes and wrote a lot about the mushrooms. And I think one of the ways the book is different is it's very mushroom centric. Most cookbooks are like appetizer, entree, dessert centric, and ours are organized by mushrooms. So you might find a dessert in the middle of the book with a mushroom, but each mushroom has its own set of recipes, and that's kind of one of our guiding philosophies, are that some recipes work great for a lot of mushrooms, but we try to find the right recipe for each mushroom. So we focused a lot on that on this book, as well as how to preserve large harvests of your mushrooms.
I just wanted to pop in and say hi. I'm actually going to go to a new computer and man the chat, and I'm going to let Trent do most of this presentation. But if you guys have any questions, I will be watching the chat. I am going to support Trent with links if he needs, etc., and try to answer your questions. So hello, thank you for having us. We appreciate you so much. And we hope to be back to the Allegheny sometime soon, because it was one of our favorite trips. It was awesome. Those entalomas, oh my gosh, you guys. Goodness, it was our first time finding them. They're so weird. Anyway, hi, bye.
Yeah, so we were out there 2 years ago for that must have been the 2019 Gary Linkoff foray up in Cook Forest. What an event. It was such a nice time to be there, and we met so many people, and you guys have such an impressive mycological society. We, went out and picked and came back, and oh my gosh, there was like Adam and Garrett and John, and I don't know who else around the table, IDing mushrooms, so many experts. Although we quickly discovered the secret, which is you don't have to hang at the ID table, just go hang out in the kind of covered patio area there where the spouses and significant others are hanging out, where we quickly made friends with them and Got lots of great ideas. And even Danielle, we met Danielle there, and she's featured in the cookbook. She's one of the 25 foragers. And Danielle has some awesome recipes. Specifically, I think our favorite in there is a pate recipe, which is like a go-to, bring it to Thanksgiving dinner, vegan pate made with mushrooms, and it is absolutely delicious. I don't know if Danielle is on here or not, but that recipe is like worth the price of admission for the book. It is so good. We're so grateful she shared it. If you come to any place we are Thanksgiving dinner, you will find that pate, because I think we make it every year now for Thanksgiving. It's so good. So there we go. What a great group you guys have. So many experts and so much going on. And the badges, what a neat idea. So I guess from here, I'll jump in. Again, chat, we love the chat. This is a good time to kind of pop in there and ask questions. We'll be watching it. Hopefully you guys can see me okay and hear me okay. I think this is on Facebook too. I got a lot of topics to cover here. And about preservation, and some big ones like dehydration or freezing, but some fun, smaller, more specialized techniques as well. I kind of want to start with this. I think this is the enemy of preservation, and you guys know what I'm holding up here. This is a Ziploc bag, and they're great for short-term storage. But I don't know if you know, this plastic is pretty breathable, and ultimately, when you store food in these, your food does not last as long, and that's why, you know, when you go to the grocery store, they don't sell food packaged professionally in this. They have a higher quality plastic. So the first advice is, if you can get out of the Ziploc bags and maybe look at like a bag like this, which is a vacuum seal freezer bag. I like these. They're pre-cut. I have like 3 sizes ready to go. And when you put your food in here, this plastic is not very permeable, so you can freeze it or keep it on the shelf, and it will last longer. Now, glass is great. You can store your mushrooms in glass jars as well, especially the dried ones. The problem there is you don't want to freeze them that way. So the bags are nice for freezing. So I love these bags. If you want a slightly longer storage life, this is a fun one. These are Mylar bags. I don't use these for mushrooms necessarily. They're kind of expensive, but these have no air or oxygen will move between this product, this Mylar, and your food will last as long as it can last in this. If you're like prepping and you want to save food for 25 years, this is the right product right here. Now I love these too for preserving my mushrooms. These are 2 different things, so you're going to want to kind of be savvy about the difference. This is a desiccant pouch. It's food safe. This is not the one that I took out of like a pair of tennis shoes. I bought these on Amazon, and they come in a bag of, a couple hundred, 500, whatever you want. And if you drop these into your dried mushrooms, they will help protect them in case you have a mushroom that's not completely dry. And they're super cheap, so I almost always drop these into my dried mushrooms just to protect them, just in case. The other thing, though, I think is a little more unusual are these. These are oxygen scrubbers. They somehow chemically remove the oxygen from the environment that they're put in. Now, I've had this one sitting out on the counter for a half hour now. It's gone bad. It's probably, pulling the oxygen out of the air. But what I do with this is I put this into products that I want to keep for really long-term storage. So often what I'll do is let me grab one here. Here are black trumpets. I store them in this bag. And I have vacuum sealed it. I'm going to talk about the vacuum in a minute. And then I put the pouch right here, and that's going to pull the oxygen more out of the air, and it's going to keep the product fresher for longer. Now, eventually then, I'm going to transfer that into, a glass jar like this, maybe. These are morels, and where they sit on my counter, and I can eat them. So after I eat this jar, I might go get another bag from the back and refill it, feeling like the bags are my long-term storage. If I don't eat that mushroom for 10 years, that's great. And then in the bottom of this, I will put desiccants just to keep it dry, just in case. And Colorado is a moist environment, but some places are more humid. And that will help keep these fresh for maybe the year it takes me to eat through these. So I would recommend you try these O2 scrubbers if you're able to. The other thing that is going to make your product last a lot longer is vacuum sealing. And whether it's frozen or dehydrated, if you can remove the air, it really does enhance the shelf life. Especially you'll notice on mushrooms that are more sensitive, especially to smell. Now we don't usually dry chanterelles, but say matsutake, which I don't think you guys get in Pennsylvania. It's really evident if you dehydrate some in a jar and you dehydrate some and vacuum seal them, a year or two later, the smell is significantly fresher on the ones that have been vacuum sealed. So let me show you the vacuum seal. You can start with the bag I showed you, and you can have a vacuum seal machine, and you can buy those all over the place, and it will suck the air out of one of those bags. I don't know how I lost the bag right here just now. It will suck the air out of these bags. But one of the things we've been using a lot recently, especially as we travel, is we also will get these bags, which look like Ziplocs, but they have a higher quality plastic, and they have a little hole right here. And you can grab it. You basically take one of these little portable units, which has that, and you listen to it. Oops. And you can put it right on this hole and suck the air out of a kind of more of a traditional Ziploc bag, and then you can reuse these bags, which is nice. They are kind of pricey. However, my favorite thing, I will show you now, is I have some vacuum sealed mushrooms here. I'm just going to open them up, and you can hear this. All right, did you guys hear that open up? What I do to vacuum seal in mason jars to, again, increase the shelf life is one of these, which are available on Amazon. It's an attachment. This one is built for the mason wide mouth, and you just put it right on here like this, slide it on, and then you put this on the top. I'll do it real quick. And that sucked the air out of this. And then I can carefully take this off, and it's vacuum sealed again. And there's no, you can't push it in. I could pop it off again and show you. But if you look in here, you can see right there at the top, there's my little O2 scrubber as well. So this is kind of put away for long-term storage. And these are chanterelles. I'm going to talk about how I did those in a minute. So I really like this vacuum sealing apparatus. I use it for a lot of different things, and just getting the oxygen away from your product is going to increase the shelf life pretty nicely. Do they make plastic storage bags that decompose yet? No, they do not. And I don't know if they would last for storing food anyways. And that's a reason to stick with glass. I think the problem is, we don't have the storage space for glass jars, so we've gone with the plastic for the long-term storage. But glass works great. However, the one downside is I don't know how to vacuum seal this jar. You'd have to get a special lid. I think I would have to invest in a lot more mason jars I could vacuum seal. But this is a good technique to use on mason jars if you want to keep them that way instead of in plastic. However, I will also note these plastic bags are reusable. You just, after you seal them, you cut the top off and you can keep reusing them. They get a little bit smaller every time. But it's surprising, even when they're half full, there's still a use for bags that are that big for your little smaller sets of mushrooms. All right, so that was plastic. I just wanted to talk about the product there. Now, I'm gonna talk about freeze drying next. It's kind of a fun, more modern way to preserve. And to do that, I think before, what I'd like to do is kind of throw in some fun alternatives along the way. So I'm going to take a little break. I'm going to jump right in with a fun one because I'm thirsty. This is a preservation technique. Here's a jar. This is called shrub. Now, this happens to be matsutake shrub, and it is a year and a half old. So it lasts a long time. It's been in my fridge. But basically, shrub is a drinking vinegar, and I drink a lot of it, so I've got a glass of ice here. And I'm just going to put some soda water in it and show you. Sorry about all the loud noise. bet you guys can hear that real well, the pouring of the soda water. And then you just take a little bit of this shrub and pour it in, and it's called a drinking vinegar. And it's, I think, maybe traditionally a colonial thing, and it's been making a comeback recently in the US, especially in bars, to make fancy mixed drinks with. But there it is. It's a soda. It's sweet and it's sour and it's very matsutake. This technique to make shrub works very well with chanterelle as well. It makes an absolute delicious shrub, especially if you pick your more fragrant species and make it out of. And all you do, and the recipe's in the book, but to make it, we take half water and half vinegar and half sugar in equal amounts. We cook that up, we boil it, and we throw in an equal amount of mushrooms. We simmer it for, I don't know, 15 minutes. One third. Well, that's one third, isn't it? Yeah, Kristen just corrected me on that. That's 1/3 mushrooms, 1/3 vinegar, 1/3 sugar. Cook it for 15 minutes, strain out the mushrooms, and what you have is a delightful drink. Chanterelle shrub is pretty delish. You can mix fruit in that way. We do a lot of fruit shrubs as well, to have alternatives to alcoholic drinks. And when we do it, the other tip, I really like champagne vinegar. I really like the flavor. You can use any vinegar. However, it is going to take on the flavor of the vinegar. So use one you like, and you might want to use more of a premium one like champagne vinegar, depending what you like. It really is quite nice, sour and sweet, and really good. All right, so that's shrub, a good way to preserve your chanterelles or matsutakes. I don't think we've used any other mushrooms on the shrub, though, just those two. So let's talk about freeze drying first as like this big preservation technique. And freeze drying is kind of new on the scene. And the reason is historically, freeze drying machines were tens of thousands of dollars, and they were available in commercial food packing plants. Where they would freeze dry product. Well, over the last couple of years, there's a new company called Harvest Right that has released a consumer level freeze drying machine. Let me show that to you. Give me just a second here and I will show you a picture of that. Okay, so here it is. This is a picture of a freeze drying machine sitting on a stainless steel counter. Now, this is not my garage. Mine looks very similar to this. My garage is not quite as clean though. And it looks like a little refrigerator. It will hold 4 trays of product. But it's pretty good size. And over to the right over here, if you look to the right of the machine, there's an air compressor. And that's part of the equipment, this air compressor. So let me come back here now and talk about the process. If I can figure out how to get back. Oh, there it is. All right, I'm back. Oh yeah, so here's the trays that go on right here. And my machine holds 4 of these trays, and that each tray holds about this much product. So I can run about 4 quarts generally at a time in the machine. So when you run a freeze dryer, let's just talk about advantages and disadvantages before I kind of break into it. First of all, the disadvantages. The machines are expensive. They're $2,000 to $3,000 to buy the equipment. They take about a day and a half, about 36 hours to run through a batch. So it's kind of a slow process. You can only run about 4 quarts of product when it's done. So you can't bulk produce. And then finally, it's kind of loud because you're running an air compressor the whole time. And it uses a fair bit of electricity. So it's not energy efficient. It has some real downsides. The upside of freeze drying, there's probably 3. Number one is, when you freeze dry food, it will last a long time, as in 25 years, very long shelf life compared to any other thing you can do, especially if you pack it in that Mylar bag I showed you earlier. Number 2 is it's shelf stable. So even though you use a lot of energy initially to preserve it, it will sit on your shelf and you don't have to use any more energy to keep it preserved. Now combine that with number 3 is it will allow you to preserve mushrooms that are normally not good dried, and they're very nice freeze dried. So the classic example is chanterelles. If you want to preserve chanterelles for multiple years, you really, all you can do is either freeze them, which isn't going to last multiple years probably, and then you got to keep them in the freezer, or you can dehydrate them, and it's just not very good. Dehydrated chanterelles are not that tasty. So they're gonna, the freeze dryer will allow you to use mushrooms and dry them in a way that normally you couldn't dry. So another benefit, and this is 2-in-1 here. See, I'll just open this up and show you. Can you guys tell what mushroom that is? I'll show you another one. Chat, go ahead and type it in the chat if you know. Here's a slightly smaller one. Here's the inside of it. And I think you guys probably know what that is, right? Yeah, let's see. Has anybody got it in there? Let me roll the chat up and see. Yeah, shaggy mane. That's right. It's a shaggy mane. What is that? Caprinus comatus? I don't know if that's how you say it, or if I got it right. I'll let you tell me if I'm right. That's not my specialty. But I think, you know, if you've harvested these, they are impossible to preserve drying. I mean, as soon as you pick them, they start to go bad. And if you dry them, it's a pretty miserable experience. But if you freeze dry them, they're going to last forever in here. But did you see how pretty they were? How they didn't change color. They kept their size. They kept their shape. They kept their smell. Oh, this is not the greatest smelling mushroom, but when you smell matsutakis or chanterelles or morels, they smell just perfect. So you get a really, just dropping everything here. You get a really nice product when you freeze dry that is really pretty. People wow about it. And then when you cook with it, you just introduce water really quickly. These will rehydrate in like 1 minute. And they tend to be a little soggy when you rehydrate them. They'll take on a little too much water. So often I will then pan saute them dry to kind of help the water release. But the flavor is generally really nice in freeze-dried products. So I like to do it with these, which are, there's no other way to preserve it. It's like totally a win-win if you want to preserve shaggy manes. Here's another good example. I'll hold these up. I'm sure you can guess what these are too. Look at how perfectly white those are. I'll hold up another one. How they keep their nice orange color. So they're beautiful. And you guys know what those are, right? Cut up lobster mushrooms. And here's a whole jar. And they smell just like lobster mushrooms, kind of like fresh, but that little bit of kind of fishy smell that you get, the seafood smell you get with lobster mushrooms. And they've kept their shape and color very nicely. Just going to put these back. And I have my little pouch in there, right under the lid, my special little pouch. I'll close that back up. And then I'll vacuum seal that later. Sometimes you can do like morels. I think this is a good example. These are just beautiful. They're big. They smell good. Oh, you heard that. That was well vacuum sealed. Here's a nice little baby. And it just really looks nice. It's a nice product. Now, the funny thing is, I don't recommend this. Some mushrooms are really just they just taste great dried. And I think morels are a good example of, they're so good dried that why would you do this? It just seems like a lot of extra expense. And we just do it because it's kind of fun. They're pretty to look at. But I don't feel like they're any better than morels when they're freeze dried this way. So let me set this over here. Talk about what I like to do and not do with the freeze dryer. I have found that some mushrooms I prefer, and we prefer dried, and we don't freeze dry. They're not as good. Specifically, we have had bad luck with yellow feet, and black trumpets aren't as good either, but we feel like they're really good dried. The Craterellus, is it tubiformis there? Or do you have another Craterellus? So I tend to dry the Craterellus species. Is it Craterellus tubiformis that you have there for yellow feet, or do you have a slightly different species? You can type it in there if you know. Other ones are just really good freeze dried. Matsutake, chanterelle are just really good freeze dried. We also freeze dry a lot of porcini. And the reason is porcini change their flavor when you dry them. And they're really nice dried and they're really easy to freeze too. But if you freeze dry porcini, they taste fresh. So here's another example of a fun application. Here's a jar. I'm just going to pull one out. We take just the perfect little porcini buttons. Look at that little baby. You know, that's like nice. And you can find little baby porcinis smaller than golf balls. Those are like the best things. And we slice them real thin and we freeze dry them. And you can just eat them. They're raw and they taste like fresh porcini. They're really nice. So I keep a little jar of these as a fun little addition to add to food. And they're kind of fun. We use our freeze dryer. I mean, I don't think it makes sense just for mushrooms. We use it a lot for fruits and vegetables, food out of our garden, as well as other foraged foods. You know, like we've had really good luck with foraged apricots, foraged asparagus, but even simple things like grapes. And you can freeze dry all your used fresh herbs and spices. So when you buy those and they're starting to go bad in your fridge, if you freeze dry them and then you put them in a jar, you pretty much have fresh mint or fresh whatever it is that you have, tarragon or parsley, right in a jar that you can cook with that tastes pretty fresh, even though it's been in your cupboard for a year. So it works pretty well. Does it shrink the mushroom? No. The freeze dryer only shrinks the mushroom like a very small amount, like 10%. So you don't really notice. It keeps its size and its shape and usually its color, depending on the mushroom. I have seen these are chanterelles here. I showed you these earlier, and they're just like freeze-dried chanterelles, and they're just perfect. They do get a little, if you look, they're a little paler than they used to be, but they smell good and they taste good, and they'll cook up really close to fresh. What are the two little preservation bags you asked? This one is an O2 scrubber, oxygen scrubber. And I just got it on Amazon. And the other one is just a desiccant pouch. Both are food safe, so they can touch your food. They're not going to hurt it. Ignicolor. Oh, is that the other Craterellus called Craterellus ignicolor? Yeah. Okay. Just seeing if I've answered everybody's questions. Good. If you have any more questions on freeze drying, now is a good time. Another one of our favorite uses of the freeze dryer is to make stock and tea. So I have here an example. Basically, you know, you take all your leftover mushroom bits when you're cleaning mushrooms, and you can dry them, you can freeze them, you can cook them into stock right away. You kind of cook that down into a heavy stock and strain it. And so then you've got this really good liquid. Traditionally, we would freeze that soup stock to add back into food during the winter. But if you freeze dry your stock, it turns into this powder that is like bouillon, and you can just put a teaspoon of this right into a cup of water, and you have basically stock that's very mushroomy. And it's fun. You can have really specialized stock. This is actually matsutake stock, but I have like porcini stock, for instance, and it's very convenient. This should last forever in this jar. And I like it because I just keep it on the counter, and I can stick my teaspoon or tablespoon in here and throw it into whatever food I'm cooking and get some instant umami and instant mushroom flavor from that. Now, this is the final thing I want to show you with the freeze dryer. This is chaga. So we took chaga, we ground it up, we simmered it in water, and then we made a really dense tea. And normally you would make that dense tea and then you could enjoy it for a week in your fridge. However, if you freeze dry it, you can just take this out with a spoon and put it right into hot water, and it acts like like instant coffee. It doesn't take very much, and it instantly turns your water into chaga tea, which is also very convenient. And we love to have, you know, I don't want to say fresh. We make chaga tea regularly. We're big fans of it. We love the flavor, and you know, we don't always have it fresh made, so we have our freeze dried version on the side, and it's just really convenient to make a cup of chaga tea at night with this freeze dried stuff. So you can do a lot of fun things with the freeze dryer if you get it and you're kind of willing to accept the noise, the price of running it. So that's freeze drying. I'm curious if any of you are in the chat here. Do any of you have a freeze dryer and have been using it? It's kind of a newer thing. Certainly happening more and more. I think the other challenge for us as we make a lot of snacks is sometimes the freeze dryer stuff sticks in your teeth. So we found some fruits like bananas, like you freeze dry a banana and eat it. It's like stuck in your teeth like taffy for an hour. So we don't do bananas, but strawberries, oh my gosh, and peaches, wow, they're so good freeze dried. People just love them. Also, we freeze dry sour things get really sour. So if you freeze dry lemons, like a slice of a lemon and you eat it again, your whole face will be like pucker up. Similarly, it brings out the sweetness in fruits. If there is grapes will be really sweet, watermelon really sweet, and it will bring out the acidity the hotness in hot foods like jalapeno peppers get really hot. Okay, I'm kind of meandering here. So I'm done with talking about freeze drying unless anybody has some more questions. I'm going to jump to another little favorite technique, and then I'm going to talk about dehydrating, which is not like a sexy topic, but it's worth talking about. Here's a bag of fun product. This is jerky, and this happens to be oyster mushroom jerky. And oh my gosh, it is so good. I don't understand why this is not in the shelves in stores everywhere. I think people just love meat, and now they have like turkey jerky. Well, we make jerky out of chanterelles, hedgehogs, and oysters. And what those all have in common are we get a whole bunch of them. We don't know what to do with them. They don't really dry well, any of them. So it's not like easy to put aside a whole bag of them. You can freeze them for sure. But with the jerky, we basically take the mushroom, we boil it for a few minutes. It just shrinks the mushrooms down. They're cooked. And then we marinate them in the jerky seasoning. Now we have, 3 or 4 jerky seasoning recipes in the book. You can make your own up. After they marinate overnight, we put them back in the dehydrator. Well, not back, for the first time in the dehydrator. And we dehydrate them probably 4 hours until they're still a little soft. We don't want to make them too crunchy. We try to cut them all the same size so we don't get bad, like wet middle parts. And then we put them back in a bag, and they tend to all get back to the same level of moisture where they're not crunchy. They're pretty chewy. They have a delightful texture. The flavor is awesome, awesome, awesome. And if it's not awesome, it's because your marinade wasn't awesome. You need maybe a little more sugar, a little more soy, a little more spice. Whatever it is you like, you can go teriyaki style, or you can go smoky style, or whatever it is you're into. Oh, it's so good. And now I finally can eat a lot of oyster mushrooms. I've never been a big fan. I cultivate mushrooms. And what do you do with cultivated oyster mushrooms? I mean, how many can you really eat? This will be gone in a couple of days. I mean, we eat the heck out of this. It does not last. It seems to be shelf stable, although I've never kept it very long on the shelf to say, would it last a year? I think so, but I couldn't say for sure. See if we have any questions. So again, if you get a big chanterelle, hedgehog, or oyster harvest, I would recommend you start trying to jerky them because it is like too darn good. Really delicious. All right, so let's talk about dehydrating. Pros of dehydrating are it's super cheap. You have great shelf like storage life on dehydrated products. The cons are that some mushrooms don't taste good dehydrated, and you kind of got to learn the hard way or listen to people. And you'll find that especially the texture of the mushrooms often is not as good after they're dehydrated. So what mushrooms do we dehydrate? I think with a passion, we dehydrate morels and yellowfeet and black trumpets. We think they're absolutely delicious dehydrated. We dehydrate porcini. We enjoy those a lot. And candy caps, which I guess you don't have. Maitake, we will also dehydrate. Our least favorite, I think, are chicken of the woods. Chanterelles and hedgehogs aren't very good dehydrated. And lion's mane or hericiums also are poor when they're dehydrated in our experience. Now the technique we use is pretty simple, and I think this is interesting. I hear it seems like a lot of people, especially on social media, are always advising you dehydrate at lower temperatures because you're ruining your food, and it's almost a black or white thing. It's not really been my experience. I usually dehydrate at just a standard temperature the dehydrator throws off. That might be 140 or 150. And I dehydrate until the food is cracker dry. And that's important, that it has to be cracker dry where it snaps a little bit. If it's bendy or soft, you're going to put that in a jar and it's going to go bad. So you do have to dehydrate all the way. Now the temperature I use, I'm going to show you a dehydrator. There's all kinds of dehydrators on the market. We use only the kind of cheap big box dehydrators. You can go from there all the way to Excalibur level machines that are expensive. I don't know that they're worth the money or not. I buy, I'm just going to show you. It's a little dirty because we ran our jerky through this a couple days ago. I just buy this from like Walmart or whatever. And I want to point out, it doesn't have any settings. This particular model, they make another one that has settings, which is a temperature and a timer. And I kind of like the one with the settings so I can adjust the temperature if I want. What I like about this particular model, and this is the only reason why I'm not saying it's better, is it comes with these trays that stack. And so they take up a very small amount of space, but then you flip them, and that's how you stack them. You flip them like that, and they go from taking up only a little amount of space to you can stack these like 12 high in your dehydrator. And you can dehydrate a lot in the dehydrator. And my experience is I usually set the temperature so that the mushrooms will be finished overnight. And so if I'm doing petite mushrooms that are not real big and I don't have a lot of them, I'll lower the dehydrator down to 95 degrees. If I'm doing a 12 racks of chunky morels, I'll raise it up to 150 or 160. And that's what it takes to get done overnight. I usually rotate my trays halfway through just to get a more even process. And I think maybe that's the advantage of a more expensive machine. You don't have to rotate to get a consistent one. But I usually adjust the temperature to get the product done in about 8 hours to 12 hours overnight. If I am worried about the temperature too high, I'll run it hot until they've gotten close to dry, and then I'll bring it back down maybe the last couple hours to kind of polish them off at a lower temperature. I don't really think that doing it at 140 or 145 like this unit does by default I think that's just fine for the food. I do think it's fully nutritious. What do you say? Oh, be careful with eating oyster mushrooms. They're 2% lovastatin by dry weight, a cholesterol lowering chemical to develop muscle pain. I did not realize that, Glenn. It definitely, I don't develop muscle pain from these, but maybe I don't eat enough. I might have to eat more oysters to see if that impacts me. I've never really enjoyed oyster mushrooms that much until I started making jerky out of them, where I found I really enjoy eating the jerky. It makes a great snack. Yeah, but doesn't heat destroy some of the constituents of the fruit? I mean, yeah, and that's what people say. Then there's some studies out there where they've done it with shiitake and oyster mushrooms, and usually about 140, I think, is the number to 150 those studies test. And does it destroy the constituents? I mean, yeah, a little bit. I think if you look at the numbers, it's not like you're eating cardboard if you do it over 150. I mean, probably any sort of dehydrating can change the chemical makeup of a mushroom. I'm just not convinced that people that tell you you're dehydrating at too hot a temperature, they know what they're talking about, or that it really matters. But do the research on your own. I think a conventional dehydrator works great. Let's see what else I've got in here. Oh, a couple of other kind of fun tips or techniques. One thing you can do, especially if you want to maybe increase the nutritional quality of your mushrooms, is to put them out in the sun for a little while. Mushrooms obviously create a tremendous amount of vitamin D when they're exposed to the sun. Now, the tests they've done on these, I think they did them with commercially grown shiitakes, and I think they turned them upside down. It was the gills that needed to be exposed to the sun for that to happen. I don't know if the wild mushrooms, they're already out in the wild where they get some sunlight. Maybe they already have the vitamin D, but I love to put my mushrooms out in the sun for a while and get them started in the sun. Some mushrooms really just taste really good that way and dehydrate up a little quicker. Morels and porcini, for instance. Other mushrooms I've tried and they haven't really helped them. I think I've had some bad luck with black trumpets, sun drying or air drying at first because they got a little weird. So I don't know if it works with all mushrooms. So Glenn, you're concerned about higher temperatures removing volatile constituents. The longer you dry and the higher the temperature, the more the flavor components are likely to be lost. I think the way that we're talking about dehydrating them till they're cracker dry, around 140 or 145. I don't think it does that. I've been eating mushrooms my whole life, not life, but since I've been doing this that way, and I think they're great. So I don't think you'll have a problem. And maybe that's a reason, Glenn, why you want to tell people like, yeah, don't use your oven. Don't put them in the 200-degree oven. You're going to get a weird product in there if you do it that way. Don't dehydrate wet mushrooms. If you do wash your mushrooms, and we're mushroom washers, it's a philosophical thing. We will frequently wash them if they're dirty. But not all mushrooms, but we do wash a fair number. As long as you wash your mushrooms and then put them back out like on your counter on trays and bring them back to their original moisture levels, they tend to dehydrate pretty well. If you wash them and put them in a dehydrator wet, it will often really wreck the mushrooms. Morels are a classic example of that. If you wash them and put them right in the dehydrator, they get like black and nasty. So you're gonna want to wash them, but then let them sit for a couple hours out and get back to their original kind of moisture levels before you dehydrate. So that's what I prefer to do there. But that is a quick way to ruin a lot of mushrooms is do them wet. You can now, let's talk about rehydration. We usually rehydrate by pouring boiling water on our mushrooms, which is the fastest. And within about 15 minutes, they're usually rehydrated. We strain the water out. We try to cook with the water if we can. And the recipe, because there's a lot of flavor in it. However, you can use cool or lukewarm water. It just takes a little bit longer and indeed might be a superior way to do it. I don't know that my palate has ever sensed a difference between that technique of rehydrating. The other thing, again, you want to save your water if possible. One of the really great ways to rehydrate your mushrooms if they're clean is you put them right in the pan, the saute pan. You put some water on them and you put some oil in with them, and then you cook them for like 15 minutes. And what you're doing is you're cooking the water off, right? And when they're done, the reason you put the oil in or the butter or whatever, when the water's done and the oil hits the pan, the noise changes and you'll hear it cooking. Then it'll start sizzling a little bit. And then you're ready to start cooking. The mushrooms are done. If you don't put the butter in and you're not paying attention, they'll start to burn and you won't hear it. You'll be like, oh my gosh, I just burnt my mushrooms. So I really like to do that. And I like to do that when I'm trying to keep my flavor of the water of the mushrooms in the food versus letting it escape into the water. In fact, if you rehydrate like morels overnight or mushrooms, they'll give a lot of their flavor into the water, and you can have really flavorful water if that's what your recipe calls for. But we do even have a recipe in the book where that's what it calls for. Rehydrate the mushrooms overnight so you can make a liquid that's very flavorful. I like to do the cooking in the pan, and that puts all the flavor back into the mushrooms. I like to do that also with my black trumpets especially. And I think the reason is that black trumpet liquid is really black. And often when I'm cooking food, I don't want to have a cup of black liquid put back into my food because it affects the color of the food. I'll rehydrate my black trumpets with this pan rehydration technique. And I really like that technique. It's just kind of easy and classic to do. What else do we have? So after we dehydrate, we store them either in high quality plastic or we put them in our jars and we vacuum seal them if possible. And we're really uptight about we don't want one bad mushroom in here. No partially dehydrated mushrooms mixed into the batch or it will ruin them. Let's see. Yeah, so good, Kristen, you're talking in the chat a little bit about the oyster mushrooms. we were lucky. We had a few foragers give us some really good oyster mushroom recipes that were really very different. And I think they really opened up some new kind of flavors for us. They don't involve butter. They're more Asian inspired recipes. And if you're looking for some fun ways to cook up oysters, I think you'll like the recipes in the book. They're not your normal, oyster mushroom recipes. All right, I think we're good on dehydration. Maybe I'll jump into another little fun favorite food. Here's this one here. This is cocoa. This is, I'll call it chaga cocoa. It's really medicinal mushroom cocoa. And Kristen, if you can put the recipe in there, that would be great. We found it online from Wondersmith. She's a online personality who does a lot of crazy foraging and cooking. Well, she has a really just delightful chocolate recipe. And basically, in the nutshell, she takes 3 or 4 types of medicinal mushrooms. In this case, turkey tail, chaga, lion's mane, and I want to say artist conch. And she powders them up, soaks them in brandy overnight. And then she takes that mixture and adds a bunch of fun kind of herbs and spices. I don't know what they are offhand, cardamom, and I don't know what else, and chocolate, good chocolate. And you cook that some more in a crock pot, get all the flavor going. Then you take this whole mess. At this point, it's like a goopy, thick substance, and you spread it in your dehydrator, and you dehydrate it, and then you take it out and put it in the blender one more time to break it down. And what you end up with is this absolutely delightful hot chocolate. It is, it looks like chocolate, but it's about, I'm going to guess, about 50% cocoa and 50% mushroom. I might be a little, it's probably less mushroom. But when you put it in your cup and pour hot water into it, we also add coconut sugar and some sort of fake milk to it. What fake milk do we add? Coconut milk? Because we don't really do dairy. But you could use powdered milk, and there you are, or real milk. And you have a proper hot chocolate. And when you're done drinking it, there's a little bit of a powder in the bottom, a little bit left over, because there are like mushroom bodies in there. But it's just a delightful way to, I think, enjoy some medicinal mushrooms. And we feel like, I think we have to make up a new batch every couple of weeks because we drink a lot of it. And I really love it. So I would encourage you, if you like hot chocolate, it's a really fun recipe to use your medicinal mushrooms for. All right, that was my quick aside before we go to the next topic, freezing. Any questions on that? Did you get the recipe in there okay, Kristen? Oh, look, there's all these messages. I wasn't seeing the chat. Joanne, I'm sorry, I missed that question. Dehydrated mushrooms should last like forever. I mean, 10, 15, 20, they last a long time. Their flavors will often evolve and improve and change over time too. I feel like dehydrated mushrooms, you're just classics. The ones we dehydrate last a long time. I don't know what the outer limit of it is, but it's a long time. Ooh, I like that. Fluff. Chanterelles and morels rehydrate nicely in white wine. That seems like a nice tip. Also, people use stock to rehydrate in. And I've seen people do, especially chicken of the woods. I've seen them rehydrate in that buttermilk to try to soften them up. All right. Yeah, you guys you have chaga there, don't you? And kind of some certain, maybe hidden birch forest, you can find some occasional chaga. Yeah. We go up into like upper Wisconsin and Minnesota where it's pretty rampant. So we have a nice little supply, fortunately. I think it's fun. It's like the only mushroom you can go hunt in the winter, isn't it? Chaga. I use the word mushroom loosely. Yeah, and there's a lot on the market. There's a lot of ground chaga product if you're not able to find it. Yeah, it's very rare there. I hear you. All right. So next is freezing. We love to freeze mushrooms. Our freezer's full of them. We find there's certain mushrooms that are just really good frozen. Now there's basically 4 techs we use to freeze mushrooms. The first one is the simplest. It's just straight up raw mushrooms. People always tell you not to freeze them. We've had good luck with a few types freezing them. Specifically, we will freeze morels raw. Some people like to prepare them for frying first. They'll roll them in flour before they freeze them raw. That works. We also do porcini and chicken of the woods raw. And when we do freeze raw mushrooms like those, like morels or porcini or what have you, and if you're going to try it, I would recommend you try it. I think chanterelles might work too, and hedgehogs, I don't know for sure. The trick is when you freeze them is you cut them up and you spread them, or in the case of morels, it might be whole. You spread them on a cookie tray and you put the whole tray into the freezer and you freeze them so they're not touching. You do that for 2 hours and then you take them out, and only after they're fully frozen do you actually bag them up. Here's an example. These are our fresh frozen porcini, which we have a lot of here. And I really like the fresh frozen porcini. I love the way they taste, and I basically thaw them for half an hour, so they're still pretty frozen. I put them right in the pan, half frozen. They cook up real nice. They release their liquid. They brown. They taste delicious. So I don't know where you can't freeze mushrooms, or you shouldn't. These are like awesome. Morels, a lot of people freeze morels raw too. Now with chicken of the woods, I've been experimenting with that. I was pretty pleased with how well they froze raw. And then what I did was when I take them out of the freezer, I put them in boiling water for 20 minutes. And we've been struggling with some sensitivities to chickens and indigestion type things. I don't know. I haven't figured out what and where and how that happens exactly, but I did boil them for like 20 minutes, worked pretty good. And after that, then I cooked them up like normal, and they were juicy and nice, and they tasted pretty good, and it was convenient. Now that's one way, freeze raw. Normally when you freeze, you're going to cook your mushrooms first. Now there's kind of 3 ways we cook our mushrooms before we freeze them. Sometimes we dry saute them. So we'll take, like in this case, a pretty moisture laden mushroom, like a chanterelle. We will put them into a pan and saute them, and they release all that liquid. And then as soon as they reabsorb the liquid, in between when they've released it and when they've reabsorbed it, we pull it off the stove, bring it down to room temperature, put them in a bag and freeze them, often in just a little bit of their own juice. We don't saute them until they're dry, like where they've reabsorbed all their moisture and started to brown. But we do want them to release a fair bit of moisture, and we freeze them that way. And chanterelles are pretty good, and hedgehogs too, if you treat them this way. With the I will call it the dry saute. You can regular saute other mushrooms that maybe don't have as much moisture. That's where you're going to put butter in them and actually brown them. I would do that with say porcinis before I freeze them. Now the third way, I'm not sure which way this was. Here's some like frozen porcinis. Now I like to saute them instead of raw because they take up so much less space. So this is a lot of mushrooms compared to the raw type. They lose so much volume when you cook them. The other thing I want to point out, I use the same bag, and see how flat they are? If you pack your mushrooms in bags like this, especially if they're the same size, and then freeze them purposefully quite flat, when they're done, you can turn them sideways and you can line them up in your freezer like books, or stack them vertically, and they take up way less space. If you're kind of haphazard about freezing them in different size bags, you can't store them near as efficiently in your freezer. So that's a nice tip. If you get into this habit of always making them nice and flat in same size bags, you can save a lot of room in your freezer. But these, I think what I did for bigger batches, and this is also how I like to do my hericiums, I like to roast them. I like to put them in a cookie tray instead of sauteing them. And I think the reason is it dries them out real nice. The hericium has so much liquid in them. So when you roast them, it will, what's the word for that when you brown them? Is it the Maillard effect or Maillot, something like that? It gives them a really nice flavor when they're roasted, which means roasted means like 400 degrees at least in an oven. It browns them up. They release their liquid. And the other advantage is when you've got a lot, you can roast like cookie trays worth. It's so much faster than sauteing. So if you have a big batch, roasting's the way to go. It's fast. It does give them a little extra flavor. And for some mushrooms like lion's mane, it is my preferred way to freeze them. I also do that same technique with oyster mushrooms, because you get those big batches, you roast them and freeze them. Oh, that was old. Now I just make jerky out of them because I like it so much more. Let's see what else we got here for freezing. Matsutake are also pretty good frozen. Although, I mean, excuse me, maitake, I misspoke. I will typically blanch those before I freeze them. Although I feel like the maitake is kind of like a morel or a porcini. It's forgiving. You can do a lot of different things with it. You can pickle it, you can freeze it, you can dehydrate it, you can freeze dry it. Like it's pretty good all ways. It's a pretty forgiving mushroom. So I can't say, you know, and maybe you guys have a lot of maitake down there, I'm thinking. Probably a lot more than we have. So you probably have a lot of experience with how to preserve maitake. For us, they're like a treat when we can get fresh maitake, and we have to come to places like Pennsylvania or Wisconsin to try to find them. So I don't have as much direct experience with preserving the maitake. Can you make maitake jerky? I will bet, Matthew, it would be awesome to make maitake jerky. Just like maitake pickle is pretty good. Mushroom ice cream. We actually have a recipe in the book for chanterelle sorbet, which is really quite nice. We like it. I like to make chanterelle sorbet. I don't have any now. I tend to make it with fresh chanterelles. It does taste a little better, although you could use frozen for sure. All right. Good. I think I've got those questions answered. Oh yeah, candy cap ice cream would be great too. That's the one thing, like people in the East and Midwest, like there's no access to candy caps locally. And those are such a fun mushroom to get. If you ever get a chance to go out West and pick candy caps, they're a really neat mushroom just from a chef standpoint or a kitchen standpoint. You can do so many fun things with candy caps. And on that note, here is bourbon. Is it bourbon? Yeah, I think it's bourbon. I don't know what kind of alcohol with candy caps in it. And it used to be full. Now it's mostly gone. I think most of it actually we made whipped cream. We always make whipped cream out of this candy cap bourbon, but it's kind of fun. You can suffuse bourbon with it, or you can do vodka and chanterelles too if you're so inclined. Okay. Oh, Garrett's on there. Hi, Garrett. All right. What do we have next? How about something fun? And then we'll talk about pickling, although pickling is pretty fun. Before I talk about pickling, I'm going to show you this. We do this, I would say every year, except here in Colorado, we've had now 3 dry years in a row. So I only have a little bit left this is like from 2 or 3 years ago. This is chanterelle jam, which is really delightful. We use the jam to make, I'm not quite sure the name. It's in the book. The recipe's in the book, but basically you take wheels of brie and you carve out a hole in the middle and you put jam in it, and then you wrap it in dough and then you bake it. And when you take it out of the oven and cut it, like the brie oozes out and the jam oozes out, and it's like really quick and easy to make because you buy the dough and I guess you could make it, but we buy the dough in the grocery store and the brie. It takes like 10 minutes to make. And oh my gosh, it's so good. But you can put this on toast if you want. It's really quite delicious. And what the secret, I think, for the chanterelle jam is we follow the apricot recipe in the jam directions. It's, Stephen, I got you on my screen here. No more of that yawning. I saw that. I can see you. It's half apricots and fresh apricot and half chanterelles. And basically what we do is we prep the chanterelles. We put them in a food processor and grind them up. We put them in a pot on the stove with a lid on it, and we cook them just in their own juice until they kind of are cooked. And at this point, they're pretty goopy. And that's half of the jam. The other half is just chopped up apricots, like we make apricot jam. We just substitute in half by volume of the chanterelles, and we follow the recipe. It's shelf stable. I keep it in the fridge though, just because I love the flavor of it. I want to preserve it as long as possible. And this is so good, and people really like it. When you feed it to people, they can't quite put their finger on it because it's a little savory. It's really nice. So chanterelle jam. We have a couple of, actually, I think 2 jam recipes in the book too. We have one from was it Chad? I think Chad Hyatt, who's a remarkable chef, gave us. Was it? matsutake fig jam, which is really good too. So, all right, that was jam. Are you ready to go to pickling, everybody? Pickling is awesome. Um, it seems like when I talk to foragers, the longer they've been foraging, the more likely they pickle. Like pickling is somehow something a lot of people move into over time. Some people, obviously, it's rich in tradition, and especially if you've come from some of the Eastern European cultures, you might have really grown up eating pickled mushrooms, or Asian cultures are big too. I think the weird thing about pickling is mushrooms is when I started doing it, I treated the mushrooms like they were pickles, which meant I pickled them and then we would put them on the counter and eat them with like a toothpick with an appetizer, which is fun, And you can do it with any mushroom. I mean, all types of mushrooms. But what we discovered was if we dialed back the vinegar a little bit, so it wasn't quite as acidic, and we took the mushrooms and would then rinse the mushrooms after they were pickled. You can use pickling as a preservation method and pickle like entire jars of mushrooms like this, and then you can eat them at will. You can take out like a whole scoop of them, rinse them off, and then put them right into your food when you're cooking, and they're really quite delightful. Let me just fix this view here. Okay. When you pickle them that way, I think the advice came from one of our foragers in the book, recommended that just take a recipe and one of your favorite mushroom recipes and swap out pickled mushrooms. And you might really enjoy the flavor profiles that it changes and gives to your food. And we've started more and more just, let's use pickled mushrooms in this recipe. And usually we're delighted. They're pretty good. And I think often maybe our recipes were missing that little bit of that acidicness anyways, that they needed to really shine. So you can dial back the acid a little bit on these, and if you're really going to do it, you probably should kind of learn how pH works, and you can measure your pH and keep it a pH above, I think it's 4.2 or something like that, so that it's still shelf stable and safe. And you're going to want to kind of honor that and learn it if you're really going to do a lot of pickling. And we have 3 pickling recipes in the book, general techniques. One of them came from Olga Cotter. You may know her from Mushroom Mountain. And hers is called Quick Pickles. And there was kind of a weird recipe. You'll get it. It basically, she had you boil mushrooms, oyster mushrooms, and put salad dressing on them. And she called it quick pickling. And it was kind of like, whatever. That's kind of weird. But I'll tell you, it's good. I would call them maybe more marinated mushrooms. But if you got some mushrooms, try just boiling them up. Take your favorite vinegar-based salad dressing, put it on the mushrooms, let them sit overnight, and you end up with a really nice marinated pickled mushroom that's fun to snack on. And it lasts, I don't know, maybe a week in the fridge at that point. It's not shelf stable or really fridge stable. It's just to enjoy. It's a nice little recipe that's really surprisingly good, especially if you like your salad dressing. And then from there, we do a hot pickle and a cold pickle. Now those recipes are in the book. And I think we have the chat here, Kristen, if you want to kind of share some details on those, I think that would be helpful. Pizza. I'm just looking at the pickle notes. So before I talk about the 2 techniques, let me talk about the mushrooms. We definitely pickle chanterelles in a big way, porcini. We love little baby morels, those little ones you pick to save the little ones just for pickling. Hedgehogs, we really like pickled hedgehogs a lot too. Matsutake, that's kind of what we mostly pickle, but I think anything will pickle nicely. Maitake obviously is one you can pickle, but when you pickle, there's a couple things to consider. One is we have found that often if you cold pickle, you're going to get a better texture. So we divide up our next pickling into cold and hot. In a nutshell, they're pretty much the same technique, but with hot pickling, after you pour the hot pickling liquid onto the mushrooms, you pressure cook them, or you water bath them like traditional pickling for, here at our altitude, I think we do it 20 minutes in a quart jar, and then they're shelf stable. That's great. The problem is those shelf-stable mushrooms, they get kind of slimy sometimes. So you're not going to like spoon them out of a jar and eat them. They get a little slimy texture, but if you cook them, often the sliminess will go totally away. So I would encourage you, don't let the texture bother you too much, because if you're gonna hot pickle and store them on your shelf for years, they're gonna get maybe a little mushy, maybe a little slimy, but cooking them will often bring it back to what you want for your recipe. So try that. I like cold pickling as my preferred way. And cold pickling, you do the same thing. You do your pickling process. You pour your hot liquid over your pickles, and when they come back down to room temperature, you put them in the fridge, and they'll last. I think they last forever in the fridge. I mean, we keep them in the fridge for a year, and we keep eating them, but they got to be in the fridge. They're not shelf stable when they're that quick pickle. But what I find is I like the texture right out of the jar. It's a better mushroom. So if you don't mind the refrigerator storage, the cold pickling is really nice. Now there's a couple tips with pickling. One is when you pack your jars like this. Here's a chanterelle pickle. This is no, that's not a chanterelle pickle. That's a chanterelle pickle. It's a couple years old. There it is. And I want to show you how full the jar is. And the secret is if you parboil your mushrooms first, and then you pack them in the jar and you pour your liquid over them, the mushrooms are pre-shrunk because you boiled them a little bit, and they'll fill the jar with your pickling liquid. If you take fresh mushrooms and put them in your jar and pour hot liquid on them, and then, even cook them some more, what happens is you end up with a jar full of pickling juice and about 4 mushrooms. Because they really shrink down and it looks really funny. So it's much more economical to parboil them a little bit and then pickle them, and you get like a jar full of mushrooms, not a jar full of juice. Let's see. And so I answered that question. We do blanch the recipes, the mushrooms really good. I basically want to shrink them in size. That's how I know when they're done. I'm like, oh, good. These are pre-shrunk mushrooms. They're ready to go into the jars. And then our recipe, are we going to share the recipe in there, or? The asparagus pickling, that's our basic. I love white vinegar. I love champagne vinegar. You can use some white vinegar for a lot of recipes. It tends to be more acidic and often have like a little different flavor. A lot of people use cider vinegar, apple cider vinegar, which is more cost effective than champagne vinegar. I'm not a big fan of the flavor of it for some reason. I always taste it. I'm like, oh, it's apple cider vinegar. White wine vinegar. There's all kinds of vinegars you can use, and they're a fun way to boost and change the flavors of your pickling. But you can't go wrong with just plain old white vinegar if you're doing it. So, great. I feel like that's there. I do want to point out too, when we do morels, I boil those too. I don't know if they have to be cooked, but just in terms of mushrooms being available to your body, right? Like raw mushrooms, your body has a hard time digesting. Clearly you can eat some raw mushrooms and they're not going to hurt you, and you can get something out of them. And if you powder raw mushrooms, you break down the chitin and you can get more out of them. However, you don't have to cook mushrooms. In effect, you can pickle. It does the same thing. You can salt and you can ferment. And all 3 of those will break the chitins down in the mushrooms and make them bioavailable. So that's the other thing. You don't have to cook the mushrooms to make them available when you are pickling or fermenting or salt packing. All 3 of those will break those chitins down. So that's worth pointing out. Now, we don't have any lacto fermentation recipes in the book. It wasn't something we're really familiar with. And frankly, I didn't really like any time we've tried it, and other people's. I'm not a fan of the flavor, so I wasn't excited to get it in the book. And nobody shared a recipe with us, and that's why we had the mushrooms that are in the book. We originally had more mushrooms we were going to add, except we found out a lot of people didn't have recipes for pheasant back. We thought would be in the book, or puff balls and stuff like that. Nobody really shot us those recipes, so there and in there. That's why we have really the 15 really, I think, most popular mushrooms in the book. I should say 17 or 18 with a couple of medicinal mushrooms. Now, on the topic of medicinal mushrooms, we do have like a tincture recipe. Here's an example of a big jar tincture made from a medicinal mushroom. This is Ganoderma brownii, which is the Western artist conch. It's very similar to the Ganoderma applanatum, I think. There's some nice tincture recipes in the book, which is a good way to preserve your medicinal mushrooms if you're into those. And that recipe came courtesy of Trad Cotter, whose book is Organic Mushroom Farming and Remediation, a really well-known book. He contributed that recipe to the book, which is pretty good. I've only got a few minutes left, so I think I want to just push through a few more fun things for you to consider with preserving ideas. Oil packing works great. It's one of our favorite ways. And here's an example of an oil packed mushroom. If you look in there, it's packed in oil. Now I've been keeping this in the fridge. Basically with oil packing, there's two ways to do it. The first way, we take our mushrooms, we put them in a big layer of salt for about an hour, and the salt pulls all the liquid out. The salt's all wet when you're done. We take the mushrooms out of the salt, and we scrape a little bit, but they're pretty salty at that point, and we boil them in vinegar for like 10 minutes, like pure white vinegar. I might even let them sit in there a little longer because it's like it seems like that flavor is really good. After we boil them in vinegar, we lay them on the counter and we let them air dry for, I don't know, an hour or 2 or 3 until they're just the perfect texture and they're a little chewy. And then we pack them in oil. And oh my gosh, you guys, we do it with porcini, and they're salty and sour from the vinegar, and they got the oil on them, and they're absolutely divine. And you can just spoon them right out and put them on whatever food you want. They don't last very long, in the fridge, a month maybe, because ultimately they're not really built for long-term storage, packed in oil this way. It's a really fun way to preserve mushrooms, and they just taste great. And it's probably the one thing when if you're really savvy about mushrooms, we would serve you that, and people would be like, what is that? How did you do that? I've never had that. It's really good. And it's just a classic, I think, East European recipe to salt them, vinegar them, dry them a little bit, and then pack them in oil. The other way is where you put your mushrooms in the good olive oil again, and this time you cook them overnight on your stove, really low temperature. You can't burn them, really low. Crock pot might work better for some of you. Take the lid off or keep the lid cracked, because what happens is all that moisture in the mushrooms is getting cooked out in the oil, and it will bubble out and then evaporate. And the next morning, the mushrooms have pretty much had the kind of liquid cooked out of them, and you can pack them in that oil and eat them for the next month. The difference is the second way, because you cooked them in that oil, the oil is kind of the star of the show. You can take the mushrooms and spoon them onto pizza or cook with them, put them in pasta, whatever you want, and put them right in your mouth. But they're kind of oily because they're packed in oil. But oh my gosh, the olive oil, that's what you want to spread on bread and do some fun things with. The oil is absolutely to die for. So it's almost worth like cooking up some in that overnight recipe just to get the oil. And that's called confit, that technique. Now I'm about out of time here. Let me just look if there's anything else. Powder is a great way. You can powder your mushrooms. I would urge you to only powder them more as you need them. Your mushrooms will lose their flavor if you grind them into powder and store them for long term. So, do it kind of as you need them. I pretty much covered everything. Last one, while we're on it, salt. You can salt pack your mushrooms. And if you can cook the mushrooms in liquid, put the liquid in the salt, put the salt in the oven to dry it out, and put it back in the blender to grind it up, and you infuse the salt with the mushroom flavor. You can even have real mushrooms in there, bits that get ground up too, because in the oven they're going to dry out. But you can get a good salt by using the liquid, the water from cooked mushrooms. All right. Wow, that was a whirlwind. What time is it? Did I go 45 minutes? You got any questions in here? Well, no.
Thank you so much, Trent. That was awesome.
Sure. Thanks for having us. That was a real honor to be with you guys, and frankly, kind of humbling, just because, I know the caliber of the members of your group and the cool things you do. And, if we lived in your neck of the woods, we would be totally involved with you guys and picking your brains all the time, because you've got so much just knowledge in your group. It's crazy. Oh, the book, I should mention. Yeah, the book, I think it's on Amazon right now still. It's sold out on Amazon. They're supposed to be back in the next week or two at the second printing. The whole first printing sold out. It was pretty cool. We sell them on our website for $20, which is the retail price. Except for buying from us, you get them signed. But feel free. We don't care. Amazon, I don't know how Amazon does it. They sell them for like $15. It's a hardback, full color book. I'm sure they'll be back in stock there in the next, I'm going to say, week or two. They just ran out recently, and so did we. And I guess now the publishers get it all printed overseas, and it's somewhere almost ready to get shipped out here to our house. So if you want a book, we can probably have it in your hands in about 2 weeks if you order it now. Then the website is modernforager.com. That's us. I know we met several of you at the Link Off Foray 2 years ago. Any other questions in here you guys want to ask? If you do, just chat them in. And otherwise, maybe we'll see you at a Foray in the next year. I know we're back in business and traveling again this year. It looks like this summer. So
yeah, it's looking hopeful.
Yeah,
definitely would love to see you all out our way again. And I mean, this presentation was so engaging. I feel like we could have sat here for hours and hours listening to you all. So maybe we could put together a workshop or something if you come back our way.
Yeah,
in person.
I do. Also, if anybody's interested in burn morels out west, which is a big thing, we chase the burn morels all over the west. They're crazy how many morels there are in old wildfires. That's something I would love to give a presentation on, and it's kind of fun, especially for maybe you guys that not where you haven't been quite as exposed to that as people out west have.
Yeah, sweet. Well, I think at this point, we'll turn things over to our mushroom ID session. I'll let Kara and Garrett take over, and they're going to teach us, speaking of burn morels, a little bit about the morels and false morels that grow around here.
Good segue. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.